Welcome to Education Forum. I'm Herman Badillo, Vice Chairman of the Board of Trustees of the City University. The improvement of education affects all New Yorkers. This program will focus on the key educational issues and challenges before us all. My guest today is Amalia Betanzos, who is a Renaissance woman in our town. We could spend hours talking about all of the areas in which she has enormous experience. For example, she is the chairwoman of the New York City Commission on the Status of Women, appointed by Mayor Giuliani in May of 1995. She has been a commissioner of the Youth Services Agency. She has been a commissioner of the Housing Department of Relocation and has been a member of the New York City Housing Authority for 5 years. And she has been one of the most prominent Hispanics in the city. She has was one of the founders of the National Puerto Rican Coalition and has been executive director of the Puerto Rican Community Development Project. And we could go on, but this program has to do with education. So therefore, we'll be talking about the areas where she has been directly involved in education. And first of all, she has been for over 21 years president of the Wildcat Service Corporation that deals with getting jobs for young people. She was appointed a member of the Board of Education by Mayor Koch and served for about 5 years in the Board of Education of the City of New York. How did you find your experience in the Board of Education?
My experience at the Board of Ed were kind of a mixed blessing. I really wanted to be on the board because I think it's probably the most important job that you can get. If we can really educate our youngsters, we can really set the tone for our future. Yet at the same time, it was a very frustrating experience because I always felt we weren't getting the real whole story and the true story all the time. We were getting...
You mean from the bureaucracy?
From the bureaucracy. It was a bureaucracy who I felt suffered us rather than reported to us. So
I don't blame you. I have the same problem as a vice chairman of the Board of Trustees of the City University. So tell me what you found.
Well, I found, for example, if they were giving us a fiscal report and I'd get a number at the beginning of the meeting, I'd ask for the same item at the end of the meeting and get a different number, and then make a big fuss. I was also very disturbed at some of the policies that the board espoused. For example, the whole suspension policy, where you get a youngster who has hit a teacher, who has really hurt somebody, and how do you punish him? You suspend him. And generally, the youngster who's in trouble doesn't like school to start with, and when you suspend him, you tell him it's okay not to go to school. So what kind of a punishment is that? How is this possibly going to change his activity? It was that kind of thing that I found extremely frustrating, and I felt that nobody really cared too much. I was also disturbed that I felt some of the top bureaucracy and some of the other board members didn't really go out and visit the schools. And how could you really know what's happening if you don't talk to the kids, their parents, their teachers, the administrators who are out there every day?
And what did you find out about the question of social promotion at that time?
I hated social promotion. It was really a waste. And that meant, and I found that out really, though, in my role as the president of Wildcat, when we would get high school graduates who could hardly read. And we couldn't. We really wanted to hire them and couldn't. And then they would be coming into our programs. We have a program for welfare mothers, and they would be coming in with this high school diploma and couldn't pass a 7th grade reading test.
So did you give them a remediation?
Oh, absolutely. What we did, in fact, what I had some of them do was take our regular GED curriculum, even though they had
high school diplomas.
That's right.
Well, tell us about Wildcat, just so we know.
Wildcat is a program that was started years ago, I'm sorry, 27 years ago, by a group of businessmen who wanted to bring the hard to employ, mostly ex-addicts and ex-offenders, into their companies, and they were failing. And so what they determined with then Mayor John Lindsay is that there should be a program to give them some pre-training before they went into the company training. And we've been doing this, working with city agencies and giving them actual work experience.
So these are severely troubled young people?
Yeah, all ages, from 16 to 65, and but a big emphasis on youth. And we have a program that works. We have an extraordinarily good program that works with the private sector for women on welfare. It's part of the Welfare to Work initiatives. And it's a program that over the years has worked with, especially with young people, as well as welfare recipients and ex-offenders.
So you set up remediation programs in Wildcat for the young people who were high school graduates?
Absolutely.
And how successful were you in the remediation?
We were very successful. We were very serious. They knew why they had to learn these things, that they're getting a good job depended on it. And I think its motivation had most to do with it. So they really wanted to learn, while very often, from what they said to me, their reaction to high school was, I just have to get through with this, get the diploma, and I'm out, and what I learned has very little to do with anything. And, you know, they had to realize that what they learned had to do with their ability to get a job.
So then, how did you go from being a member of the Board of Education on Wildcat Services Corporation to the Wildcat Academy?
Yeah, I got a call from then Chancellor Joe Fernandez, who had had a meeting with 12 of the principals of high schools where they were having all these riots in Brooklyn and having hard times in managing the kids. And they all told him that if they got rid of 10 to 12 kids, they could run their school. I really just don't believe that. But anyway, that's what they told him. He didn't quite believe it either. So he
Those
said,
were the troublesome kids.
The troublesome kids. And most of them had been suspended. Some were just really troublemakers. Some had court cases pending. And so he asked me, would I start a school for them? I said, that's wonderful. I think it's the best challenge anybody has ever given me. He'd love to do it. And we had Ron Tabano on staff, who had been a vice principal at a Catholic high school before. And we got together with him and with Cy Flegel and Carlos Medina from the Manhattan Institute at that time. And we did a curriculum. We did a whole new program, deciding that we wouldn't let ourselves be fettered by any of the rules and regulations.
This was a high school?
A high school.
For kids?
Who have had trouble in other schools. Most of them had been, in the beginning, were suspended at least twice before they came into our school. Lots of them had serious court cases pending.
What kind of cases?
Rape, murder, and grand larceny, any kind of serious crime, really. And we took them into the school, and we decided that these youngsters had wasted a lot of time.
Tell me this, was it boys and girls?
Yes.
Well, tell me, like, the first group. What was the first group of students? How many of them were there, and what was the ethnic breakdown, and what was the breakdown between boys and girls?
Well, we started with about 10 to 12 youngsters, and half of them were black, African American, and the other half were Hispanic. They generally were very troubled. In fact, our first interview that we had with a youngster, because we interviewed every youngster and their guardian or parent, was with a youngster who had lost both his parents in the past 2 months to AIDS. And he was brought in by an aunt who was 65 years old. And he was so troubled he couldn't even say good morning. When I said good morning to him, he went, morning. And that was the way he talked, always down someplace. And this youngster, 2 years later, became the valedictorian of the class and gave a magnificent speech and went on to the University of Syracuse. And he's, of course, the best story we have, but we decided that to reach these youngsters, we had to have a small school, no more than 120 youngsters, 6 teachers, that they had to have a work component, and they had to go from 9 to 5.
Well, how does a teacher teach those students? Because there are different grade levels.
Yeah, it takes a lot of doing and really very careful planning and a lot of computer-assisted learning. And you can have a lot of 3 or 4 levels in a class, if it's a small class, and have at least 2 hours of computer-assisted learning a day, and you can manage it.
Now today, how many students are there?
We have 125 youngsters.
You have 2 schools now?
No, and in the one school, the Manhattan school, it's 125 youngsters, and in the Bronx, we have 69 youngsters.
Okay, let's look at what's going on now at the Wildcat Academy.
Wildcat Academy was established in 1992 under the auspices of then Chancellor Fernandez. Chancellor Fernandez visited the Wildcat Service Corporation, which has been in operation for 20 years, and spoke to Mrs. Betanzos, who is the president of the Wildcat Corporation. And he said, I have an idea. He said, what if we took some of the students who were maybe causing trouble in the school system, and we took them out of the classes, and we opened up a small school for these students, because the idea being that we could not only maybe make the class size smaller in those schools, but maybe if these students who are having trouble would go to another school where it was smaller and there was a tighter control, maybe they would do well also. Based largely on a youth program we had in the 80s. We had done a Division for Youth program. It was a GED work-study program. And the students that we got in that program were students who had been incarcerated. And with the reputation that we have from that program, Chancellor Fernandez believed that this would be the ideal spot to try to do this type of a school. So we opened up, and within a year we were up to 125 students. Once we opened up, we determined that this was the model. We said that one of the important things would be first to establish a culture for our students. First of all, it has to be a place that's safe, where there's strict discipline, where the students know exactly what the rules are and what they have to abide by. So the culture, we established the culture. It was like almost miraculous how quick it happened. I mean, we have students from all ethnic backgrounds, and there's no friction, the students blend, they know they're in this together, and it just developed so quickly it even amazed us.
I believe, and I believe this completely and truly, that art is one of the most important subjects a child, especially a modern child, could learn. Because a child in the past had time for themselves, time to develop. They lived on a farm, they saw beauty, they did things from beginning to end by themselves. They saw a beginning of a project and an ending of a project. Art shows them that they can do extremely beautiful things. They can begin it and finish it, and they can see it. Once they see that they've achieved that, they're not afraid to go and try and maybe fail a little bit the first couple of tries, but they will continue doing it until they achieve. And that, in this way, I think is how we get them to graduate.
I did my college work at Tufts University in Medford, Massachusetts. I have a bachelor's degree in English from Tufts. I graduated magna cum laude in English. And I have a master's degree in education from American University in Washington, D.C. And now I have a New York State permanent certification as well as New York City license as well. In my first year teaching at Wildcat since September of '98. And we have a multifaceted English department. I teach classes in regular writing, creative writing, language arts, literature, and also Regents preparation. But a lot of the students here, although they didn't go through the whole process in the educational, the other high schools, a lot of them, it's not that they're not intelligent at all. They're actually very bright students who, for one reason or another, didn't fit in other schools, whether it was absentee, whether it was behavior problems, family things at home. They were going through adolescent things. But a lot of my students are very talented, both intellectually as well as creatively in their writing, as poetry, short stories, and things like that. And it's been very rewarding.
What we want to be known as a school with high standards, with a tight curriculum, with a good curriculum, that will help a student come out of here and succeed in a college, well, and succeed in life.
We're talking to Amalia Betanzos, who is the president of the Wildcat Services Corporation and the founder of the Wildcat Academy, which is a high school for troubled youngsters. And we just saw the video. But tell me, what is the experience now with the students? Do most of them graduate? Do they drop out? And what kinds of problems do you have?
We have very few dropouts, and 75% of our youngsters that graduate go on to college, which is quite extraordinary. We also have some that go directly into employment, and they're helped by the Wildcat job developers. And we have a number who go into the armed services. We have a Navy SEAL who belongs to us, and also an Air Force Special Services person. The Army, the Armed Forces, is, for some of our kids, is absolutely necessary because they need to get away. That's one of the reasons why we try to encourage, for some of them, college outside of the city and do everything to get them scholarships.
Now, I saw a number of young women there. What kind of problems did they have before they came to Wildcat?
Unfortunately, the same problems that young men had, but more. We've had young girls who've come to us with razor blades in their cheeks. That's the way of trying to get through metal detectors, and with very serious problems. We even had one who was a drug mule, and the person who was employing her as a drug mule was her father. So really horrendous problems.
So how long has Wildcat Academy been in existence?
5 years. We're going towards our 6th graduation.
Well, it would seem that you then have adequate experience to show that these youngsters can learn, right?
Absolutely, and they do, and they kind of sop up learning. And I remember when we started, the police came to us because they were worried about whether we'd have riots or fights. And thank God, in the 5.5 years that we've been operating, not a single fight, not a single disturbance. The kids kind of get grounded in the Wildcat culture and what's appropriate for them at the school. And we have disciplinarians, too. We don't fool around.
Well, if you've been as successful as you say you have, why isn't the program expanded much more to similar institutions? Because if Chancellor Fernandez said, take 10 or 12 kids out of every school, there are a lot of high schools where you could take 10 or 12 kids out of and give them the kind of service that you do.
I really can't answer that, Herman. You know, very often things that work are left to die on the vine very quietly. I haven't been very quiet, so I think that's one of the reasons why we haven't died on the vine. But there are a lot of good things that are happening around the city that nobody seems to focus on, nobody seems to try to replicate, and that don't get very much support, and that's quite unfortunate because there are lots of good things that could happen.
That's the problem I found in Congress, that my files were full of successful pilot programs, and then nobody wanted to duplicate or replicate them. What is the position of Chancellor Crew?
Well, we have talked to him. We're hoping to have a visit from him, and we have not had one. But so many of the things that we're doing successfully are the things that he's advocating. For example, the 9 to 5 school day, the year-round school, the fact that we're doing some work experience and community advocacy for the kids so that they're getting involved in their communities and they're also working, and it's so important for them to work. We have one youngster who was working for a stockbroker as an intern. They liked him so much they're paying her college for 4 years and will give her a job afterwards. And we have people working for law firms where very similar things have happened.
So what are your plans for expanding?
I would like to become a charter school. I'd like Wildcat John V. Lindsay Academy to be a charter school, mostly because I'd like to go up to 200 students. I'd like to have even more control. Right now, we're allowed to choose our teachers, but it's a struggle always.
Tell me this before I forget. Are the teachers members of the UFT? Do they get the same pensions and benefits, and is the UFT supporting the program?
We have found the UFT to be very helpful right from the beginning when Sandy Feldman gave us the ability to start the school with non-UFT teachers. Right to now, when we are members of, our teachers are members of the UFT, they have been extremely helpful. But one of, I think, the things that make our school run is the fact that we choose our own teachers. They all have to be certifiable. Sometimes I think certifiable can be used in a different meaning, but they all must be certified by the state. And I interview each one of the teachers to make sure that they really believe the youngsters can learn and that they want to teach this kind of youngster.
What do the teachers specialize in when you bring them to the school?
That's probably one of the best things. For example, we have an art teacher who teaches art, Spanish, and anthropology. All our youngsters get art. Everybody gets art in the school. We think that's a very important thing in helping them to succeed. We have another teacher who teaches social studies with brilliance, has mock trials in her classroom, plays History Jeopardy and things like that, and the kids just love it. Wonderful young computer teacher who gives them grades by according to how much money they earn. If you pass a test, you may get $100. You pay tax, you get interest in the bank, and whatever, and you need $1 million to buy an A. We have a math teacher who's just so brilliant that the kids all want to write poetry, want to follow the batting averages, and they all have stocks that they follow, so they know the reason for math. An English teacher who has them all writing poetry and being very excited about it. We have some part-time teachers that the Robin Hood Foundation pays for. One of them that helps with reading. Another one that teaches them music. It's one of the people who teaches big band music, so they learn to play instruments. And a drama teacher who is a actor on Broadway that comes in and teaches them how to walk. These kids don't know how to walk, so that, you know, the way you walk and present yourself is very often a key to your success. Our kids know how to walk, and they know how to look you straight in the eye when they talk to you, and it's because of the actor that we bring in who's a teacher.
Do the kids don't mind going to school from 9 to 5?
Well, they start minding, and you know, we let them know up front this is it, and they all come up and they'll say, Mrs. B, why do we have to go to school from 9 to 5? Nobody else does. And my answer to them is very straight. You wasted a lot of time. It's time to catch up. And we try to really do things with them in a very straight way. We'll tell them everything the way it is. And they accept it.
And they come from all over the city?
All over the city. There are some youngsters who come from Bay Ridge.
And where's your school located,
It's
the one in Manhattan?
In Manhattan and Tribeca.
And the one in the Bronx?
It's in the Hunts Point area.
And they come from all over the Bronx there?
Yes.
Now, if you could, if say you were the chancellor and you wanted to expand your program to all the kids that needed today in 1999, how many Wildcat Academies would you have to set up?
I think just for starters, we'd have to send up at least 12 or 13.
And how many students would be involved?
I'd say at least 150 in school, in each school.
In each school?
In each school. No more than 150 tops.
Well, is there any program now, other than yours, that deals with these students in the high schools? Because there must be a very substantial number that are creating the kinds of problems that Chancellor Fernandez said were going on.
Well, an RFP was issued 2 years ago to set up 3 schools. Wildcat answered the RFP and was chosen for one of the schools. That's our second school in the Bronx. The other 2 have not opened.
So now, who supervises your school? The Chancellor or the Board of Regents? Or
the Chancellor. We're part of the regular school system, and it's the Superintendent for Alternative Schools who supervises us.
And they actually come around to look at what you're doing?
Yeah.
Now, what would you say to, well, let me put it this way. If you were going to set up charter schools, could you set up a large number of charter schools to do precisely this?
I would love to, and I think we could. The real secret is getting somebody to run it who really knows what they're doing and who really believes in the concept that difficult youngsters can behave and they can learn. We had Ron Tabano, who's the head of the JVL one, in-house. The other teacher was the best teacher we had in our JVL Academy, and we named him the principal of the other. I have 2 other teachers in the school who could run schools right now, and we could train them. I think that way, kind of that internship in a school that runs that way is probably the best thing. Yet, the Manhattan Institute took the concept to South America, and we have 2 schools in Argentina and 1 in Chile,
Really?
and they come and they talk to us, they call if they have a problem, and they've duplicated it there.
And how many kids are there in those schools?
They're about 100 in each.
So do you plan to expand all over Latin America as well?
Not really. First of all, I don't have any time, and I hope that within Chile and Argentina they will, even though I've heard from the Center for Educational Innovation that they'd like to do something in Chile, in Brazil, so could happen.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time, but I hope we can come back again when you have developed a charter school.
Wonderful, thank you.
You can reach us by email at our website, www.cunytv.cuny.edu, to let us know what you think, or write to us at CUNY TV, 25 West 43rd Street, Suite 1220, New York, New York, 10036.